All right, let's do it. Bing
All right, we're
bong.
live. We're live. We are back this week in crowdfunding, our fourth live episode, I believe, Connor.
Yep.
And
What's up, everyone?
it's been a pretty interesting week in the world of crowdfunding, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, lots of news, lots of stuff to cover. So we're excited. But before we cover it, Brendan, did you have a good day today?
I did. I did. It was a long day. I'm kind of tired, but not too tired that I can't do another this week in crowdfunding and get excited about the stories again.
Yeah.
How
So
about
do you
you?
want?
How was your day?
It was good. Went in the office, New York City. So it's always nice, walking down Park Ave, seeing everyone dressed up.
Can't have
Feel
a
like
bad
Harvey
day on Park
Specter.
Avenue. Can't have a bad
Yeah.
day on Park Avenue. No, I was in the
So
city yesterday and getting cold, man. It's getting cold.
yeah, getting chilly. Hudson Yards is nice though. You gotta love it.
You can't go to a bad place in New York City. Well, you can, but especially where all the what I'm trying to say. Now I just showed my tiredness. What I'm trying to say is, all of the big corporate centers, most of them are just,
Yep.
really bustling now, which is really nice to see. And,
Yes.
that's what I was
Yep.
getting at,
Yep.
obviously. But I guess maybe that's my cue. We should go a little into crowdfunding now.
Yeah, so here are the stories. We'll give a quick summary real fast, and then we'll dive into them. So first one, Isaac Hayes the third, the CEO of Fanbase. They raised over $4.5 million in equity crowdfunding. That's awesome. And then there was another article by FinTech Nexus where equity crowdfunding returns growth by round. And it talks about how equity crowdfunding is quickly becoming the primary means of financing pre-seed and alpha rounds. Another interesting story.
Okay.
And then we have the UK bank Kroo. We were trying to figure this out before we started.
KROO. We're gonna go with Crow. Let's go with Crow. Let's go with
Crow.
Crow. I like it.
UK bank, known for their digital banking services, they amassed over $1 million equity crowdfunding in under a few hours, which just shows you the power of the people, right? And then the last, second to last story, EU business crowdfunding is now bound by block-wide regulations, which is super important. We'll save that kind of towards the end because I think this is another massive story. And then we're going to talk about kind of not equity crowdfunding, but TikTok allowing you to add songs on your Spotify account without having to go to Spotify and just scrolling on TikTok, liking the song in the TikTok video, and then adding that. I think this is going to completely change the game, and it's going to change the music industry. So What do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about Isaac Hayes. I thought that was a really, really awesome story, especially one of the headlines that I read, which was he was the first Black entrepreneur to raise $10 million equity crowdfunding.
This is awesome.
So shout out to Isaac Hayes. I actually personally have never heard of Fanbase, which is some sort of pay for follow social media app from what I can gather. Cool concept, but I don't know much about it. So I'll be researching that a little bit more. But awesome milestone. Love to see it. And I think, Connor, you can tell me if you agree, but I think what's awesome to see is that we believe that crowdfunding is going to help all of these startups. And, whether you're from, Seattle, Washington to Miami, Florida to, India to the EU, as we're going to be talking about in a little bit. It's nice to see that there is diversity, at least from what we can see, that there's a diverse allocation of capital going on in crowdfunding.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the fact that anyone can invest.
Right.
So with the ability of anyone being able to invest, it doesn't give a selective few power over the many. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But the ability now anyone can invest, it comes down to as if you have a good product, if you have a good startup, good mission, people believe in you, you will get money in equity crowdfunding. There doesn't seem to be as much discrimination as there is that we see and we read about in the VC industry. Right. And then we can talk about, remember what Brooks said, where the stat was in 2019, only 2% of female founders got out of the total amount of VC funding, it only got allocated to 2% of female founders.
Well, yeah, that was
and she said it's only gotten worse. right? So you hear stats like that, and you're like, there's got to be a better way. And it seems like, equity crowdfunding is a better way. And then the fan base app, I did a little bit of research. What they're doing is they're building a community-driven ecosystem where every voice, every creator, every supporter shares in our collective success. So it reminds me what Twitter's doing, where they're paying people
Okay.
based on the impressions they generate. Fanbase is trying to do the same thing, but it's a similar model to kind of TikTok, Instagram, where I think it's pictures and video content. So
I like it. That's interesting.
yeah,
That's
and I
pretty
think
interesting.
going this equity crowdfunding route is a very smart move, because you want, as we talk about, the investors to become users of the product and advocates, and this is the best way to get there, and it's a good go-to-market strategy for them. So I'm
Yeah, I
excited.
agree. It's nice. One of those headlines that was really nice to see. And yeah, I mean, I would be interested to see what the diversity statistics are behind equity crowdfunding. I'm not very well versed in them, but this is a headline that's very good to see.
Well, that's a perfect segue to the next article, which is talking about equity crowdfunding returns growth by round. The reason why I said that's a perfect segue, because in the article, it said nearly 50% of all issuers coming online have at least one woman or minority founder. Silicon Valley has never been able to successfully find or fund these entrepreneurs because of the lack of access. So this kind of reiterates what we were talking about, where equity crowdfunding, it's more inclusive at the end of the day, and so that's a good thing, very positive thing. And it's very exciting because this is just the beginning. But in the article, it also talked about a lot of the progress in the equity crowdfunding industry came from the lack of VC funding in Q3 of 22, which makes sense. We both saw like the uptick of startups, signing up for WeFund or Start Engine. And then
And the
another,
startups too. The quality.
yes, it improved significantly.
Yeah.
But you want to hear, I think this is the most exciting stat. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, go.
So most of the value is still tied in these private companies because a lot of the investors, a lot of the startups haven't IPO'd yet. And that value in all those private companies currently is over $66 billion of economic value.
Okay.
It's a lot.
There's a $66 billion private market for startups. Is that what you're saying?
Of $66 billion of basically invested capital that's realized gain, that's a unrealized gain. It hasn't been realized yet. So once they take their exit strategy, the IPO, then it'll become realized, and then that's when the retail investors will get a lot of money back from their returns, and then that's when the media will start to see all these success stories, and the industry will really boom. And then another fun fact is Boxable started at $42 million when it raised. Now it's valued at $3.3 billion.
I mean, so let me play devil's advocate for a second, right? Yep. We've seen in mainstream venture capital how these really cool numbers, really big numbers, big figures, have almost kind of backfired on a lot of startups, and that's why we're not seeing a lot of IPOs.
Right.
I'd be interested to see if there is a similar bubble in equity crowdfunding valuations from the same time, or if equity crowdfunding valuations are more efficient.
That's interesting. That's really interesting.
I have no doubt in my mind, as we talked about with Kevin, right? We need a win. We need a big win in equity crowdfunding, right? Like we need a big win to put us on the map, put the industry on the map, and be like, it worked. Like you can do this. And then we need another win and another win and another win. But what we don't need to happen is to have a similar problem to what venture capital is having right now, if that makes sense.
100%. I feel like
while it would be a win to have one of those companies go public, it in the end probably wouldn't be as big of a win as the industry needs. Do you kind of follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's almost like we need. Are you saying more of we don't need like a home run and then a bunch of strikeouts? We just need a bunch of base hits.
Yeah, and that's almost what I'm trying to say. Like, I think it's great that there's this amount of unrealized gain or unrealized return in the market, but I don't think that necessarily means great companies all the time.
Yes.
And I think that if equity crowdfunding is going to continue to put itself on the map, what it needs to promote is great companies. And I think
Quality.
that's quality. And that's what I guess what I'm trying to get at is if you're going to have an efficient equity crowdfunding market, the market has to promote running your company efficiently and effectively, just how VC is doing right now. So
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see if there's correlations in the market with how companies that raise mainstream venture capital are behaving to how equity crowdfunding companies are behaving.
That is a great point. And there has to be some sort of correlation. The question I think is more of what really is to what level is the correlation, right? Is it exactly, or is it like a little bit just because there was so much free money in the market at the time, but it didn't nearly get as out of hand as the VC market? And I think I want to say it's probably the latter, just because I think, if I always think of the analogy, if you want to make $1 million, you just have to sell $1 million thing to one person, $100,000 thing to 10 people, like going down the line. It gets a lot harder the more people you have to sell to, because if it's a one, and I think it's the same thing with raising VC capital, where you're raising these VC capital, they have a ton of money. And if you get one VC to commit to giving you money, they're giving you millions. Now for equity crowdfunding, a lot of these investors are doing thousands, a couple thousand. So it's significantly harder to then justify that valuation being that overpriced. That's what I like to think. We'll find out soon though, right?
We sure will. And the article that you're speaking about, it kind of goes into a nice history of how we've gotten here. And I think that's well worth the read for the audience as well, to kind of give you perspective on how much the industry has grown in the last decade plus.
Yeah. So it's very exciting. And I think this is another sign of, it got a lot of momentum in Q3 22, but it seems like that momentum's continuing to grow, even though VC funding is back now. And VCs are investing in startups. Still, we see quality startups, a lot of quality startups signing up on WeFunder, Start Engine.
Yeah. So. I mean, WeFunders kind of had, again, from our conversation with Kevin, they've got that. I think this is from our conversation with Kevin with the Y Combinator
partnership.
Thing,
yep.
Right, where they're bringing startups out. When we talked to Martin Tobias back a few episodes ago, he talked about how a couple of his portfolio companies use equity crowdfunding. I mean, it is what equity crowdfunding has become is a very reasonable and accepted way to raise capital for certain startups, for certain brands, certain business models, not brands. So now, sidebar, but is that for those D2C companies, right? Does crowdfunding continue to grow there? Or do we start to see more other types of business models raised through equity crowdfunding? That's probably, in the back of my mind, one of the most interesting trends I'm looking for going forward.
Yeah.
Is the market's continuing to grow, but how does it grow? Does it continue to grow with D2C brands almost exclusively? Or is it growing with very, diverse business models, startup business models? So
I think as an advocate for the space, I would like it to just, as of right now, continuing to grow and just focusing on the D2C model, because we know it works. We know not only are the investors really happy, but the founders are super happy. And since this is still a very young and new market, let's just play out the playbook that works. Let's not try and get too fancy. Let's not try and get in over our heads, and just do that. And just like the analogy earlier, just get as many base hits as possible. And then once we kind of get more and more momentum, then that's when you can start getting a little bit riskier, taking more chances.
So I guess kind of good segue into Kroo, the startup that we seemingly can't figure out how to pronounce. But, it kind of goes with the growth of the industry. Well, Kroo exceeded a $1 million crowdfunding target. And listen to this, with investments made on average every minute.
Yeah.
Every minute.
How much it averaged a minute?
How much?
1,329 pounds per minute, which I think that's a little bit more than $1, right? A pound is a little bit.
That's like, So
it's like 1,500 a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible. I mean, there's not much else to say besides congratulations to them. And I think £1 million was their target. So like they're
Getting
there,
it in a few hours.
getting it in a few hours. And they are they're a fintech platform, correct?
Yep, a
Yeah.
digital banking service, and their approach to banking is transparency and fairness.
Yep.
And I think then again it goes back to just being very consumer friendly. The companies that are very consumer friendly have a lot of success raising capital equity crowdfunding on crowdfunding platforms, crowdfunding rounds, right? And a lot of consumers, I think in the UK, based on what I've read, love this banking service.
Yeah.
And I think I looked at the payouts have already been like $15 million to users. So they're trying to be there for the user, for the consumer. People recognize that, people like that, people appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you see, the result is raising over $1 million when you want to raise capital in under an hour or in a few hours.
Look, fintech, as we well know, is a very polarizing space, right? You have some startups that just absolutely kill it. You have some that you never hear about again. It's just the nature of it, right? But the ones that stick, I think you're right. They're very consumer friendly. And like my mind goes to a very different business model, but a bank like SoFi, right? SoFi is so consumer friendly, and you see with the advent of these high yield savings accounts and things like that. I mean, you have a more informed consumer now, so they're going to look out for options that benefit them. And not knowing Kroo super well, and from what you said, it's a business model in fintech, or at least a overarching mission, right? That seems to stick and seems
Yes.
to work and has worked. So, be interested to see how big this one gets. I feel like I say that all the time, but you see a company like this raise a significant amount of capital and already have a significant amount of success. They were, I just read here, they were crowned one of Europe's top 10 fastest growing fintechs in 2023 by Sifted, which is fantastic. Yeah. So another great company, or seemingly great company, crowdfunding.
Yep. Shout out to the team.
Yeah,
congratulations. It's awesome. More than 1,400 investors too.
This just shows you how many investors are out there in crowdfunding. It's not as small of a space as you think.
So, with that being said, talking about Europe, you want to get into the next story?
Yeah, this one's a little bit interesting, right? A little bit more on the. It's not necessarily a joyful story to talk about.
You don't think so?
Well, Connor, why don't you lay the framework for everybody with what they did?
EU business crowdfunding is bound. Well, the title of the article is EU business crowdfunding is now bound by block-wide regulations. All business crowdfunding platforms wishing to operate must operate within in the EU, must comply with the new EU-wide regulatory framework that brings uniform set of rules to the bloc. So that's kind of the basis. There's uniform rules for all these platforms that they have to operate under. And so how about you talk about your take first, then I'll talk about mine.
All right. So the reason I had that reaction at the beginning was I thought we were talking about a completely different article. So I had the wrong article pulled up. So that's okay. No, I think this is a step in the right direction because we've talked for a few times about it, and especially during our conversation with Kevin about how there is a dark side of crowdfunding. There can be bad actors. It's not any different than any other business, really. I think seeing the EU take the initiative to go out there and make sure that, take this step and create these regulations, I think it's a good thing. It shows, number one, that it's big enough to pay attention to, right? Yep. Number two, that they they are looking at it and saying they are talking about it and thinking about both sides of it, saying what good can happen and what bad can happen. So
Yes.
I think it's a good thing to see. You never regulations always can be a touchy subject sometimes because you don't want like too much regulation, whatever. But I think
Regulatory
generally,
capture. Yeah.
yeah, I think generally what the EU did here wasn't that bad of a thing.
So I think that's a very good concern you brought up. With regulation, always has good intentions, but not always the best result, and so that's always going to be a concern. But keep in mind, there's 4 types of crowdfunding platforms. There's the reward-based platforms, which is like Kickstarter. Then there's
Right.
donation-based, used for charities. Then there's equity-based and lending-based, right? So those are the 4 types. And before this, especially in the EU, it was super complex and super hard because you might have to follow a set of rules for certain countries, but then other countries you have to follow a different set of rules. So there's a ton of just different hurdles, which added a lot more friction to just a company raising the equity crowdfunding, or just a crowdfunding round in general. So they said one of the biggest hurdles was the lack of common rule sets in the EU, and with one authorization to rule them all, there's going to be fewer hurdles to operate across all 27 EU states, which in my mind, I see that as that means the supply of startups we're going to see on these equity crowdfunding platforms is going to increase, which is always a good thing because the more startups we can get there, the more choices the investors have. And then, we have this framework, right? Quantity leads to quality.
Right.
I think it's going to be the same thing with equity crowdfunding, where the more quantity we can get just in the system, the better the quality is going to be in the end.
Yeah, I think I mean I agree with you. I kind of go back to what I said before, which is the fact that it's like the fact that they're doing this indirectly means that it's big enough for them to have to do this, and that's a good thing. That means that there's enough demand out there to make this a viable thing. I mean, we've seen crowdfunding really take off in America, right? And it's had waves in other countries, but I feel like America has really been the center of it. But I mean, think about all the great companies that have been created in Europe, right? Spotify. I mean, just off the top of my head, but to see so many different solutions coming out, things like DoxyChain, other platforms, right? And then to see governments have to address these issues and talk about these issues, it's only putting crowdfunding in the news more, putting them in front of more eyeballs, giving it more attention, which means that there's going to be more quantity, as you say, which I think is a good thing. Yeah. So I think we're in agreement there. Do you want to give it? Maybe we'll go last 5 minutes or so. Let's talk about TikTok and what they did, and I'll start with the headline, which is TikTok's newest feature lets you save favorite songs directly to Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music. I mean, I'm not like a huge TikTok user, right? I just don't all the time, but I have it. I will say when I did use TikTok a lot, like I remember like back during COVID, the height of COVID, right? Like the top 50 hits in America were all TikTok songs. Like there were so many songs that became famous on TikTok. And
Ice Spice.
Exactly. I could think of like hundreds of like it was, and we were in college at the time, which made it even like crazier. But like to think that it was that big, and this feature didn't exist is nuts. Now you add this feature. I mean, TikTok is going to become like the place to like start your music career almost. Like,
it's going to be like the Twitch of gamers, but like TikTok's going to be where all the musicians go, and then they're just going to get their songs out.
Right. Yeah. They're just going to, who says they can't just release the song on TikTok? I mean, I think it's going to be let me say this before I like make too many crazy predictions. I think what's great about this is that you are giving more people an opportunity to follow their passion, right?
Right.
That's what you want, right? Equity crowdfunding pretty much is the same thing, right? You're giving people more opportunities to achieve their dream. And I think that this, while I think it wasn't necessarily the reason they thought of doing this, I mean, I'm not in the room, but um, this to me creates such a great opportunity for so many artists out there to get their music out and to like we talk about how, you know, if you have to make 6 clicks, right, you're less likely to buy an item than if you
Yep.
have to make 2 clicks.
Yep.
Right now you're making it a 1-click thing for these people to continue listening to you or this artist. I think it's a great thing, and I'm glad they're doing it.
Yeah, so you mentioned like the top 50 songs were all TikTok songs. Well, now with this, the top 100, top maybe 1,000 are all going to be TikTok songs, and that's
It's going to
the
be
way
annoying,
it's going to
but
go.
it's okay.
It is, but I think this was a really smart move on TikTok's side as a company, because this makes it. I always like the songs on TikTok. Like I tend to watch the same videos with the same songs because certain songs are really catchy for me, and I just like it. And then I see them dance, and I want to dance a little bit in my head. I'm starting to dance, but not really right now. Anyways, seeing that and just knowing you can immediately add it, so it reduces the friction, which is good. But what it also does is there's still talks about TikTok getting banned, right? Well, now when you have this and it's this integrated into Spotify, Apple Music, you can't ban TikTok. And then Apple Music and Spotify are going to see just how many more users they get their way just from TikTok, how many more songs are added, how many downloads are played. Apple Music and Spotify, they all make money off the song, the amount of times the song's played, certain downloads of songs. So to me, this this makes sense, and it's going to make so much sense, and it's going to be such a good move when we look 5 years from now, and we're just going to realize, well, TikTok's not just become a content creation, but it's also more or less going to become some sort of music platform, right? Like you were talking about, now musicians can just follow there. And then, you know, what happens too if, like, let's take it a step further. Maybe people can start streaming on TikTok and then connecting it to their Twitch account. So like that might be the next step, right? So it might just be the beginning of TikTok's a platform where creators just go on, try and capture your attention, and then because the platform's integrated into so many different other apps, they can easily add you, follow you, subscribe to you on your other platforms without having to skip a beat. So there's no friction at all.
It's kind of like what Elon's trying to do with X.
Yes.
What you're talking about is making it the creator's platform. And while TikTok and X are completely different mediums, like I could see that happening for both of them.
And they already have a shopping store. You know that, right? TikTok already has a shopping aspect.
That's what I wanted to add. That's what I wanted to add because I saw that they added a store, and Snapchat just did the same thing, where you can click to buy like an Amazon item just right on the app, which is like, I mean, Instagram has like a similar thing, right? It's not like completely
the same though.
But like, I mean, it's a really good thing for those retailers.
It's gonna be bonkers.
Yeah, it's nuts. And this was something I wanted to run by. It was just a crazy thought, crazy business thought. This could be stupid, but I'm going to say it anyway. So Amazon Music, right? Like a clear third to Apple Music and Spotify, if it's even third, right? Now Amazon Music is going to be in front of more eyeballs, right? Because you can connect to it, right?
Can you connect with Amazon Music?
Huh?
Can you connect with Amazon Music?
That's what it said here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and Amazon Music. This is the time for Amazon to take over a bunch of people, move them from different platforms, undercut the price, and have it in front of more eyeballs and be just as usable as so many others.
Yeah. You know, what it might end up happening is it ultimately might just decrease the value of just having the music app in general, just because it doesn't matter where the music, when you click like the TikTok button, you could be downloading it on any of the platforms. So it might ultimately just really hurt Spotify, because Spotify is a music platform. Apple Music and Amazon Music are not music. I mean, that's the music aspect, but they're not making a ton of money from that. That's not their main source of revenue. So it might be more of like a decentralized music platform where you can just end up listening to songs there.
Yeah.
Do you see the kind of that stuff? So then, if that's the case,
I mean, there's so many different ways you can look at it. I mean, I've switched from Apple Music to Spotify. Like recently.
I've been so close so many times.
It's like Spotify. I mean, both of them are good. The thing with Spotify
is so much better.
It's just the way it looks. Like it's just so like slick. Like it's just, and you get podcasts. They have audiobooks now. So they've been doing.
You can watch videos on there now on Spotify.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah, I do it all the time for podcasts. I mean, video podcasts. We have video podcasts on Spotify.
Check it out.
If anybody else wants to check it out,
leave us a review. Let us know what you think.
So I think that does it for us this week. We said this one wasn't going to be a long one, but we're working on 31 minutes right now.
Yeah, and I think we covered a lot. It was another.
It was
we're 4 for 4 with good weeks covering this week in crowdfunding. 4 for 4.
Yes, and cool. Basics. Like a bunch of heartfelt stories this week, which is nice. Isaac Hayes. I'd love to have Isaac on the podcast. Love to have the people from Kroo on the podcast. Really anybody from the articles we mentioned is just super interesting stories this week. So thank you, all of you out there, for your continued support. It's been great.
Yep. Thank y'all. We love y'all. We couldn't do it without y'all. We appreciate it. Subscribe, like, comment. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want us to cover, and see you next time.
Yeah, we will see you next time.